want to see if this is broadcasting both our voices now. Unless... Oh, it's not yours. You'll have to make yours. Let me know when you do. Alright. And we're just gonna farm some legendaries as we go. Yeah, no, I met him the other day, and he just helped me out with my build and my character wise, so I added him and we played a couple things together, went through and what was it? Yeah, farmed some legendaries. That was really about it. So yeah. So we finally got our, I guess they finally got our, because I disagree with it, but the 2 articles of impeachment. I was like, well, it really wasn't. I really wasn't like getting into it. I just figured I was like, hey, we can talk about it.
Alright, let's do this. Alright, I'm here.
Alright. Yeah, so we got the 2 articles of impeachment, abuse of power, and our and Congress. So, what was that called? I can't think of the freaking name.
Come on, this is your topic. You should be able to talk about it.
It is. I was just listening to it. Holy hell, what was that called? Jesus Christ. It literally just left my brain. Obstruction of Congress, that's what it was.
There you go.
Yeah, couldn't think of that. Saved my life.
So out of those 2, you don't believe in either one?
No, I don't believe in the obstruction of Congress. I feel the obstruction or abuse of power is a little far-fetched, to be completely honest, in my personal opinion. Because there's nothing tied to it at all, as far as like what exactly he did.
Okay.
At least from what I've been hearing. Again, I could be completely wrong. I don't think I am. But from what I heard on the news today, that's what I heard. So I was like, huh, this seems rather interesting.
Okay,
like,
so you don't think the abuse of power. Now, do you feel that there's any merit to the
Congress one? No.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any merit to the Congress one, just because he does have the executive ability to not go to Congress for impeachment-wise.
But does he have the right to tell his staff not to?
Now, see, that's, so when I was listening on that today, 'cause that's what I was really trying to get into. Hey, what they were stating is in the past, like Nixon, for instance, he, refused to go. And they went to the, Supreme Court and tried to get a ruling, and that's when Nixon resigned. Republicans didn't do that this time. And so that's why I was like, huh. What is that? Gourds? See, I don't have gourds. I don't have.
What's up, PG?
Having a little TED talk. What you doing? I figured.
Yeah. It's right around someone's bedtime. You gotta talk softly.
I tell you what, I'm tired as hell today.
Yeah.
So what do you think on all that?
You know, I'm torn on it. So, Abuse of power. I
Yeah,
look
will you
at that
send me a
man.
private, an online thing, a friend request thing? Should
Who
be able
did?
to. Will you send me one so I can join your server?
I didn't send you Jack.
I know you haven't. I'm asking, will you?
I don't. You just joined me.
It's not letting me. It says mute, block per session. Not in a team. Let's see. Yeah, it allows me to join PG, but not you.
Well, wait for her to get over here. You're not blocked.
I know. I haven't. It's kind of your new nickname now, though.
Wow, she took offense to it when you did it.
I know, right? Everybody else can call you that, but me, jeez. So yeah, I just don't feel like either one of those hold a whole lot of merit because one didn't even happen until after they started the process.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter, right? That's like, hey, I wasn't really speeding, and the cops started chasing me, so I fucking nailed the gas. Now I ran a red light.
Well, I understand that to an extent, but like I said, it's just like I feel like they're kind of just grasping at straws now.
Okay.
Because now that they don't have the quid pro quo to fall back on, it's kind of like, all right, now what are we impeaching with? By the way, we're talking about the impeachment process that's going on. They have the two articles they finally announced today, which were the obstruction of Congress and the abuse of power. That's what we're talking about. My bad, jeez.
I didn't know you knew those kind of big words.
It's already starting.
Just now? A little slow, huh?
Oh, man. By the way, PG, if you want, you can make it so that your voice can be heard. So your voice can be heard. I'm live streaming. Alright, that's fine. Well, I am right now, yeah. We're just talking. So, I mean, what do you think?
You know, I'm torn. Like, I'm not a fan of them. I mean, I don't think I've tried to hide that fact at all.
No, not at all.
Do I think there was some kind of you need to do me a favor before I'm willing to do anything for you? Yeah, I really do. I think he does do abuse of power. If not now, I think hopefully by the time he gets to the Senate, you'll find out that his shady ass lawyer had all kind of dealings at his behest. Let me be clear on that. I feel that, you know, I think he's definitely like a ringleader, if you want to use that term, or a higher up, and he just had his minions do it. I think he was dabbling in things he absolutely shouldn't have.
All right, well, let me throw this one at you then. Do you think it's right to impeach him for what somebody underneath him did if they cannot prove that he gave him the order to do it? For instance, like if me and you were sitting there and you were like, I don't know, you were my secretary or whatever, and you go and I know, right? Hey,
that was good to dress.
You do.
Shave first.
And I go, hey, you know what? I really want some coffee. Go get me some coffee. And you go rob Starbucks for that coffee. Should I get in trouble because you robbed the store?
No, but at the same time, you know, along those lines, I don't feel that that's what happened. You know, I don't. He's not the type to. And again, you know, I speak as if like I'm like, yeah, we have fucking lunch, and he's a dick every time, you know, he fucking stiffs me on the check, kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah, send me
know,
another one, PG.
But between his character that we've seen so far, between other shit that he's done, I don't believe he's the type of person that just goes, I want coffee. It's kind of like he pulls up to the Starbucks, looks at it, and says, hey, I like Starbucks, and it would be cool if you came back with a 50. Wink, wink. Right?
Yeah, but
Like,
at the same time, he's not telling you to do it. I mean,
no,
it's
now
your
you
actions.
can't do that. Okay, yeah,
But
but
see,
that's
it's
the
your
same time as
actions to
saying,
do it.
yeah, okay, well, I kidnapped your child and say, hey, you can have your child back as long as you rob this bank for me. You're
Yeah, but see,
right.
you committed a
You know what?
crime by
I robbed.
kidnapping my child.
Yeah,
No, that's a
maybe.
crime.
I'm not arguing that. What I'm arguing though is like, are you responsible for me robbing the bank, or should I have had enough willpower to say no?
Okay.
That's what I'm getting at. Oh, fuck! Hate these goddamn things. Um, that's really where I'm torn with this. Is that
Go down.
ah. I'm thoroughly against shit that he's doing, and I think I've been very adamant about that. That
Yeah, you
I have a
haven't hit that.
problem with rolling back social nets. I don't believe social nets are all end all be all. I disagree with rolling back. I have a. It is because it's one of those. I have such a problem with anyone who's willing to take away things that fundamentally help everybody, right? And so one of the things that got rolled back was um, the mandate that healthcare providers cannot use pre-existing conditions against you, nor deny you because of pre-existing conditions. You know, I look at things shit like that, and it was nothing for this person to do this, nothing, right? And then to come back and say, well, we're going to make healthcare better than it ever was. Well, that definitely hasn't happened. Like, nothing has moved forward other than, hey, we repealed these mandates. Um, we've seen no other good. And we keep doing shit like that. And you could argue things like, well, opening up the wildlife sanctuaries and whatnot for drilling and whatnot, good, bad, it's just land. The animals will move on, they'll get used to it or whatnot. I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but at the same time, don't we have these resources other places? And if we have to go to these far ass remote places, is it worth it? What are we gaining by doing it? What are we giving up? I look at shit like that. I look at things like Ukraine, where like it's like, you're right. There's no actual verbiage, but the whole thing just seems so weird that like if you get that strong of a bad vibe from it, odds are you're probably not wrong. And everybody seems to have a really bad vibe about this.
About
Like,
Ukraine?
yeah, like okay, we really should stay in really good terms with them because people are right. They are trying to become more democratic. Slowly. Are they perfect? No. As we pointed out, we're not perfect.
True, but on the other hand, we did just give them ballistic missiles.
Uh,
I mean,
After the fact, but
it
only
was.
under certain terms.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying there was no terms there. I'm not stating that it was over the terms that they keep saying Trump had to do, but there was terms that had to be met.
And again, terms for the group, right? Or in this case, for us as a whole, or at least the majority, would be great. But we don't feel that that's necessarily what was going on, right? Like there should have been no reason for a president to reach out and said, "Hey, this I want you as the president of your country to look into this one matter." Really? Because that should have seriously went through. Well, we're just going to say State Department, right? The State Department themselves should have set things up the ladder. There should be no reason for a president to go, "Hey, I want you to do this," and especially when there could be any ties uh, to what's going on, and that's really what's happening. That's the weird part about this whole thing is that it's so convoluted that no matter where you look at it, you're like, huh. And again, I've said since day one to you that that I have an issue with ousting him if we can't prove it. As much as I
Yes.
hate this president,
Can you give me some
right?
steel, PG? Yes, please. While you're chilling on the couch. Yeah.
Yeah, right?
I feel like for live streaming purposes, I won't give your name out. Like, I wasn't trying to be a dick,
Forgive
I
the
promise.
audience. Forgive the audience. We have children with us, and they seem to be on the slow side.
um, but so, and see, that's where I can agree with you. You know, if it comes out when they go do this process, because as it's being talked about right now, it's gonna go through the House. They're gonna say yes, we want to go through it. About 5, please.
Well, technically, that's what they just said. They're moving. They're moving
Yeah.
again. They filed their articles of impeachment.
Yep. And so it'll go through. It'll go up to uh, the Supreme Court, right? That's where it goes to next.
The Supreme Court.
No, not Supreme. I can't think of the fucking name of the fucking place.
Do you need to pause and like read some cliff notes of how your government works before we continue
No.
this?
Anyways, you know what I'm talking about. I don't think it'll actually. I don't think he'll be impeached. That's what I'm getting at.
You know, the good question about this: will this hamper things enough, or throw enough out there for people to see, to make it, to have any impact in him? You know,
Did you give me
as a running
steel?
candidate.
Oh, it's saying
Wow.
that I didn't get no
Could you?
steel from you.
I love how you just fucking use people on the server. You're just like, yeah, yeah.
Right.
I'm gonna call you things you don't want to be called, and I'm gonna ask you to. That's good.
I don't think it will dampen it. I think if they're not able to impeach him, if everything comes out and he's found innocent, I think it'll actually hurt the Democratic Party in a severe way. Yeah, I was like, I don't think you gave me steel. uh,
No, trust me, we get it. I mean, I
oh
remember
yeah.
school.
Oh man, is that a trick question? Um,
Right?
I feel like at this point, with everything that's going on, I don't think it would hinder him in any way, especially if he's found innocent. If he's found guilty, I don't think he would be reelected. But it depends on what he's found. Well, this is what I mean by it. It depends on what he's found guilty of. Uh, so that's what I mean.
We'll continue.
Um, because they say abuse of power and stuff is some people really don't care. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody's like that. Some people are like, technically, if you look at any president, you can find some way somehow to link them to abuse of power. Um, but yeah,
So
I just
you're pro. At least at the start of this, you were pro. Does this sway you at all?
no, it does not. I feel like honestly, I just don't see that he's done anything to be impeached for. To be completely honest,
Okay,
I
so forgetting the
haven't.
impeaching.
I haven't seen anything to make me go, you know what? I don't think he's a good president, or I don't think that he should be reelected. I haven't seen anything like that.
Okay,
Um, what
so
about you?
you're still firmly in his camp then.
Yes, as it stands right now, I am. Now, if something comes out when it shows, hey, you know what, he did X, Y, and Z, or you know whatever he did, something where it's an impeachable offense or wrong that the president shouldn't have done. Because I don't think asking another country for a favor is necessarily wrong. But if it shows out that, hey, you know what, you don't scratch my back, I'm not going to scratch yours, then yes, I do believe he should be impeached.
So you're okay with him asking for favors, though?
Yes. I mean, technically, I think every president at some point has talked to another country in some way, shape, or form and
And
asked
that's for a
for a
personal
favor.
favor.
See, and that's where I don't know if it's necessarily a personal favor, necessarily. Because he was asking them to look into the 2016 elections, which, while it
Why
did
would he?
involve him,
Well,
well, because they were technically a part of it. This whole charade
that's where
came
you
on.
take this.
I do. So, the whole charade, or the whole thing was that Russia was involved in tampering with the 2016 elections, and so was Ukraine. And to put that to rest, and this is what I believe was the supposed to be the correct interpretation, was to put this to rest. He wanted them to look into it in order to show one way or another what all was happened with the 2016 elections, given the fact that with the Mueller investigations and everything like that, what all was going on, what all truly happened. I do believe it was for the benefit of the country, not personal gain.
So how does the country benefit from that? That's my problem.
Okay, so if me and you say work on a house together, all right. So now we're doing something together, and we have PG here, and me and you are having an issue with something. We can't really see past it, right? So we have an outside eye or source come through and look at it, and we see, hey, you tell me what you see, what you can find, because we are having an issue seeing it ourselves. Oh, Chase wants to be invited, I believe. And that's how I figure, this is what I think was supposed to happen, or what the reasoning behind it is.
I have no idea what anyone's asking me. What? Who knows?
I don't know, but I know he wants to be. He keeps sending me party invites.
You told me no.
No,
You said no.
well, that's good.
Look at that.
I had a talk with him. You can't add him.
I don't know. Rex is changing the story now. This is why he's a Trumper.
Because I'm willing to move on after we have a conversation, as long as you stay within the rules.
Yeah. Yeah. I have no idea.
Because I asked Nomad to send us an invitation so we can join him, and he refuses to do so.
Actually, I don't send you invites. You just up and join me. There is no...
Yes.
Join you.
Votes were tampered with, custom. No, votes weren't tampered with, correct? They were just trying to meddle in it. There's proof that the Russians tried to meddle with the 2016 elections. Not saying that it actually had happened, but they tried.
Okay, so what happens when you people click on me and say join?
No. I think
Well,
you have to... It says mute, block, or report. I think you have to be in our party first before that works. I agree. Yeah, it is.
I really don't want to leave where I'm at.
Yep. Ukrainians, yeah. So the Ukrainians, when they did, I don't know the name of the investigation, but when they did the investigation, it was said that the Ukrainians didn't meddle in it, that it was the Russians. However, with the Ukrainians, Trump believed that they did meddle in because some of the government officials from Ukraine who were tweeting about it and making certain donations to other parties and so on and so forth.
Yeah. And he cares why after he was elected?
I don't think it. See, that's why I don't think it's about him. I think it was for us and then also for the Democrats because that's the only thing they keep saying.
That man
Well,
doesn't
he
do
won
anything
because
for
the
us.
Russians. We have a different point of view on that one.
He does things that are good for him.
Although I will say this, I think one of the weirdest things out there right now that it's going through is Space Force. We're getting a sixth branch of the military called Space Force. If he agrees to give maternity leave to like 260 million government officials or workers, whatever you want to call them, and a couple other things. So there's the Democrats put a can't even think of the word of it right now. Yep, no, I lost the word. That was it. Yep, I lost my train of thought. I'm too tired.
PG, what are your thoughts on this?
Mm-hmm.
I know you haven't started taking civics classes yet, but I mean...
Oh. Oh, I really am curious. No. So there's a bill being passed or trying to be passed right now. I think it's through the Democratic Party, I believe. That they're trying to get maternity leave for government officials and extended maternity leave for government officials. And I think it's also for males, not just females. And that's part of the... Or if you do this, we will agree to let you have Space Force. And that's supposed to be like $650 billion for this new unit in the military. This new branch. Yes. I feel... it kind of... I go both ways on that.
That doesn't
Because...
surprise anybody here.
Because honestly, I see the reason why some men should want it or do want it. You know, they want to spend time with their child as well. Sometimes, you know, they're single fathers. Same time, though, I'm like, does the guy really need to be there? I feel like maternity leave is more for the mom than the dad. But given cases like C-sections, for instance, or, you know, certain complications of birth where the father needs to take care of the mother because of complications after surgery, that could be the reason why I see it's okay for... I can go either way on that one. No, but I feel like if he called himself a woman, he could technically be the first female president. You know, hey. So, PG, what is your opinion on this whole impeachment process? Why not? Well,
What do
that
you
doesn't
mean you
help.
believe that women should be not in fucking government and home alone, like fucking pregnant? That is some old time shit thinking there, PG. Yeah. What the hell do you mean barefoot and pregnant? The hell's that
Oh.
supposed to mean? Wow, you really gotta turn on the mic. I mean, the world's gotta hear this.
Technically,
Those are
he's
some
not wrong.
strong opinions.
Right now, they're only hearing what he says and what I say. So technically, nobody hears your defense. Yeah, no,
Oh
yes.
yeah.
So technically, you might want to turn
It's,
your
I
mic
mean,
on and defend yourself.
it's cool. I get it. Those are strong opinions. They're yours. They're yours. But and they're strong.
The vice
I don't agree
president
with
will
them. I figure women should be
take over.
equal. But,
Um,
you got your background and beliefs.
Now the vice president. That's a good question, Custom. By the way, I do have people commenting on while we're and watching this while we're talking about this, guys. That's where I'm getting kind of these side comments and questions from. When the president gets impeached, the vice president takes over. Um, is that even better? It depends. Not a lot of people really have an issue with Pence. Everybody's more focused on Trump, so I don't know.
Right? Because, again, like all vice presidents, right? I mean, they don't have huge states. I mean, in all reality, the first lady and the first dog tend to get more camera time than a vice president does.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how it is. Just FaceTime with the public just becomes less. Good, bad, or indifferent. So
how would you feel if Pence did become president if Trump were to be impeached? Or do
I
you
don't think it could be any worse.
you think it would be
in
any
all
better?
honesty, I do. I really do. I think once a vice president takes over, with the exception of dropping a bomb on, forgive me, Hiroshima, I believe it was. That vice president coming up going, hey, got a bone to pick. I think, no, I don't think that he would step up. I think there'd be enough scare tactic there that he'd settle down a little bit and go, whoa, let me think about what needs to happen. I think we'd ease out about what's going on right now, meaning that I don't see the vice president, if he became president, really sticking up and doing anything drastic. I think he'd go out like a lamb and really get everything back on an even keel for the next running.
All right. Do you think that the Democratic Party might come after Pence once Trump would be removed?
No, I don't think so. I know everyone's got this big worry and this big fear that this is going to start this whole "I came after your guy, you're going to come after my guy" thing.
Yes.
I don't really see that. I think that becomes really petty. I think we're really to a point now where people are just kind of tired of the complete outlandishness that we've got going on. They're like this isn't presidential. And I'd love to say, well, you know what, everyone voted for. But if my memory serves, and again, my memory's on the older side at this point in time in my life. I do believe that he did lose the popular vote. So I really hate to say that we voted for him, when in reality, we didn't.
I believe, yeah, if I'm not mistaken, he did lose the popular vote in the beginning, and then he won the Electoral College.
Yeah, he just won the Electoral College. And if I'm being completely honest with myself, I get the Electoral College back in the day, right? People couldn't get out enough. Not everyone really voted, and we could classify people as too common to really understand everything that was going on or whatnot. So we had Electoral College trying to say that, quote unquote, the brighter and smarter of all of us got together to really decide who should run the country. I don't believe that anymore. I believe with the way things are going or what now, I think that if I'm giving the chance for a say, it should absolutely count. I think the Electoral College does us a disservice, and I think the Supreme Court did us a disservice when they voted against states that went ahead and created laws that say, hey, whatever the majority of the state says is what we need, our Electoral College has to follow. Is it PG sexuality? Because we all have questions about that too. Age included.
Do you have a question about the Electoral College or the popular vote? Yeah, that's why I'm waiting for him to respond.
And again, my memory could be shaky on that one, but I'm pretty certain that him, unfortunately, a few presidents we've had have all won the electoral and not the popular.
Yes. See,
it causes me some slight discomfort, if you will.
See, I don't have that really didn't bother me that much, and this is why I don't think everybody
Because
goes
your
out
guy
and
won.
vote for the no, I don't think everybody goes out and votes for the popular college, to be completely honest. Everybody goes out and votes, I really don't think it's everybody voting.
I don't know what you mean. You have the option to go and vote. If you don't go and
Yes,
vote,
yes,
you didn't get your say. Correct?
yes.
So then what's the problem?
I'm not saying that's the problem. I mean, I'm just saying I do believe that the electoral college, if I can talk tonight, is
Electoral.
electoral. Whatever. I'm from the South. Uh, yeah, but I mean, you're weird. And nobody can even hear you, by the way. So like, me and him are talking to somebody, they can't even hear you because you have your mic turned off. Yeah. Oh, is it on now?
No.
I was hoping. Anyways, no, I want you to turn it on so people can hear you too. I do believe it's needed because again, states like California and stuff where they are so much bigger and have such a higher populace than, say, for Michigan again. Um, for example, I feel like it's needed so the votes are more evened out, so that it's not always the same 3 or 4 states pretty much deciding what goes on.
I'm not sure. What are you trying to say?
Electoral college,
Right.
right?
Right.
Different states have different numbers for
Right.
representatives.
No,
Right?
I get that.
Yeah.
But no matter what, you're never going to get one state that rules it all.
No, I never said one state, but if you can get 4 or 5 of the bigger ones, then the smaller states, from my understanding of the reason why we had electoral college, is you get 4 or 5 of the bigger states. If they all vote one way, then as far as it comes to the rest, it pretty much wouldn't
No,
matter
see
what.
this is where the notion of how the electoral college would work if you disbanded it. So now we're having a hypothetical, right?
Okay.
So what we're really talking about is that 51%, 50.01% of the state, right? Pick the number that you need, right?
Mm-hmm.
The higher percentage in that state that votes, one way or the other, that's how your state votes.
Yep.
Right? It's a done deal. Right? No more. The electoral college votes goes out the window. As it is right now, the electoral college votes really are very weird, right? Because again, like you said, California can have, what is it, 55, I think, or something like that.
I believe so. Yeah, they've got a pretty big
So
chunk.
you're right. It's really weird the way it is right now, especially. But if the state only got one vote because the people went out and voted, well, there you go. Right? My state gets one vote. Every state gets one vote. I don't care how many people you got. But I also feel that there are more laws. There's a notion that, and there's a whole TED Talk on this, and it really, I found it very intriguing, that talks about voting and how it could be really brought down to the individual. So one of the problems with voting is finding time, getting there. Not that it's complicated, but it's out of your way. And why don't we have online voting? Well, we don't have online voting mostly because, our government can't seem to keep things locked down. Shit. Our credit card companies can't keep our data safe. Why would we trust anybody else with it? I mean, it's ridiculous. Even though Social Security relies on Expedia that got hacked for, proving whether or not someone is a real person or whatnot. But let's not go into that right now.
Yeah, I feel like that actually would be kind of bad if it was online, to be completely honest. I feel like that would be way too easy. Create fake accounts for fake votes and to be hacked.
So again, we get into what do you mean by fake accounts. We tie them down to Social Security numbers. We've got things that we can really do to help prove you are who you are. There are things that we could honestly do if we put our minds to it, if we wanted to make this serious. But we don't. No one wants to. No one wants to spend the money. It always comes down to money.
Yeah.
But there's this notion of the individual being able to vote in more matters because they're brought to you instead of having these, what we claim are people that we vote for. Sometimes we vote for people in my area around here, we've got judges and whatnot, and there's no one to run against them. Now, anyone could run against them. I realize that I could run against them, and at least it would give them someone to run against. But just because someone is in office doesn't mean they're right for office. Doesn't mean anyone voted for them. Hell, they voted for themselves and they could win because no one else knew who they were, and they had no one else to vote against them. So
yeah, I've seen that happen before.
So how do you deal with that? Well, you can deal with that by bringing voting more locally. And the whole TED Talk talks about that, how you can try to accomplish that, and how you can use things like avatars to try to weed out. Because you're not going to vote on everything, right? It would be ludicrous to. But how do you weed through who should vote on what and what's there and what's not there? And it really dives into that. And I really do believe that voting should be more individualized than having representatives all the time. Because I don't feel representatives, they have their own bias. And I think that's my problem. Everyone has their own bias, right?
That is true. I'll give you that.
Right? It's always my family and me first before everyone else. And maybe that's not. Maybe that's too broad of a stroke to say everybody is that way. But at the end of the day, I would argue that a lot of times it is. And so how do you trust these people to make sure that their interests are your interest instead of what their interest needs to be for themselves or their family first?
Well, wouldn't then you agree that everybody should vote on everything then?
Well, and that's where I start to get into that would be really hard to do. I also partially believe, and again, I say partial, I'm an enigma myself because I don't have all the answers. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I think laws should also have expirations on them, right? I mean, there are still places like in Ohio where it's still against the law to tie a giraffe to a telephone pole.
Yeah, I agree with that. There are some stupid laws out there that have been on for a while.
Right.
Kentucky, you could take your wife down to the courthouse on Sunday and beat her with a switch no bigger than your thumb, and it's legal. As long as it's done at noon.
PG. Want to get married? Wait.
You have to
Is it legal for same-sex marriage in that state? That's Georgia. Anything's legal.
Yeah. Alright, so me and my boss, we were talking. That's what me and him came to the conclusion of, If this comes through and Trump does get impeached over this rather vague, or at least to me seems vague, impeachment process, what's to stop every president from this moment forward from being impeached, or just because the House, the majority of the opposite House, so right now it's Democrats, say the next president would be Democrat and the Republicans own the House, what's to stop them from doing it just because they don't like the president and they use, it's abuse of power for the smallest, most minute thing. The next time the next president stops a aid from going to another country and they go, you know what, that's abuse of power, let's impeach him. What's to stop all this from happening?
I think you worry too much about the large what-ifs in that case. Because, again, this has always been a possibility, right?
Yeah.
This always has. This just happens to be the first time that, someone has actually used it. So we have the argument, what's the likelihood someone else is going to use this again? And you never know. You really don't. It's one of the reasons that we keep limiting the powers of the president over the last how many decades? The last time we did it, was it? It was right after Roosevelt. Yeah, it was right after Roosevelt. Would be, I think, the first time that we really set a limit on powers. That at least I can recall. Again, I'm not a historian by any fact.
Did we do one after Nixon?
Well, that's what I mean. But FDR was way before Nixon, there, buddy.
Oh, I know that. I'm saying, though, didn't we do one after Nixon?
But Congress was afraid of FDR. Right? They were afraid of Roosevelt because he won 4 terms. Now, he didn't live through his 4th one, right? But he won all 4. And he was passing laws that later historians would come back and say, you know what, he didn't really have the authority to do that, but nobody was going to stand up to him because the people loved his ass so much. Mm-hmm. And Congress is afraid of it. So what did Congress do? They chickened up and they said, whoa, we can't have someone come in for more than 4 terms because they just become godlike. It's okay. So we start limiting powers. And you're right, after Nixon they did. and so on and so forth. And they started limiting. There's another time where they decided to vote so that way the president couldn't just send out militaries wherever they wanted to. They had to. They're
But
allowed
did
to do
Bush do
emergency
that?
responses.
Yeah,
Well,
that's what
yeah,
he used. He used 9/11.
I think you need to.
Well, I'm
You
not
might
talking
want to.
about the Gulf War. I'm talking about when we actually declared the war on terrorism.
Right, and who did that?
It was Bush, not the first one, the second.
Okay, I was like,
Yeah, I
all
wasn't talking
right.
about the first Bush. I wasn't around during the first Bush. Was I?
Yeah, you were.
I wasn't old enough. It didn't matter to me.
Um, but yeah, we've always had these kind of issues and whatnot, and you're right. So the next set could come through and whatnot, and and it probably should. You know, if I'm being honest, I think it should. I think we need to get to the point where we realize, as a people, our representatives suck, and that we really need to take a better stance on what we do with our votes and our chance to have a say. You know, from the ground up. Um, and maybe we need this. Maybe the people need a wake up call to say, you know what, our representatives suck. They're worse than our kids. You know, they have more in common with, like, you know, PG than they do with me. You know, so we need to figure out what to do about these people.
All right, so
So
let
sometimes
me
a bad thing's a good thing.
let me put a pin in that for a second. David, what do you mean by a 2-year term limit, not 4, for the president?
Yeah, the president has a two-term, but during Roosevelt's time, there was no term limit. So
Yeah,
he
at that
actually
point, yeah, there
won
wasn't.
4. He didn't make it, unfortunately. He died. Uh, and again, that's why he didn't drop the bombs. It was, oh, what was that old dude?
PG, you left. Did you leave me?
Um,
She left me. Oh, all right. And House. So you mean limit the president and the House to 2-year terms,
I didn't say
not
that.
4? No, no. David did. She did leave. Wow. I feel like 2 years is actually too short. So me and my boss were talking. 2-year terms I feel are too short, even for a president. I think 4 years are fine. As far as, and what, I'll ask you your opinion in a minute. I think that we should have 8-year terms for Senate, and then give them the same option as the president. So you get an 8-year term, you're allowed to serve 2 terms, and after that, you're done. Um, Giving you a grand total of 16 if you're reelected in your second term. I feel like that should give everybody enough time to work your house, to work whatever bills you're wanting to work in and get stuff through. So you got twice as long as the president in. That allows you to get underneath multiple presidents, but you're not there so long that, you know, you're still stuck from slave days in modern day time, you know. I'm just using that as an example, by the way. I don't think any of, as far as I know, are from that era. Oh, what do you think?
You know, this is one of those weird ones for me. I don't believe that government should be a lifelong job.
I agree.
I believe that one of our biggest problems is that they have too many benefits. So again, they have more self-interest. I mean, they have one of the nicest retirements. They have one of the nicest health cares. And that's not to say they're not doing a hard job. Then again, I look at street pavers and that are busting their ass, and you know, regardless of whether or not they like their job, sure they could show something else. They're busting their ass. You know, lawmakers, they're doing what they do. They're doing a job that is hard for a lot of people, or a lot of people can't do. But that doesn't mean that they should be treated or put up on a pedestal. And that's kind of what we do with these rewards. They collect a really nice paycheck. They have a really nice retirement, and they have really good health care. And, you know, I can't complain about any of those things myself. But at the same time, I have a hard time with lifers in government. Not that a lot of them can't or aren't doing good. It's just a weird scenario where they're gaining so much that why would they want to step down when when they've accomplished their goals, or if they're not accomplished them, how do we get them out easier? Because they have such an incentive to try to stay,
Yeah.
that they can fight, and a lot of them have money to begin with, so they
Oh,
can afford
yes.
to try to campaign or try to push to stay in office by, I'll use the terms any means necessary, wink wink. Um, and so I think money plays a big part of it. I have a problem with all of our presidents always coming from, at this point and throughout history, coming from wealthier families. Um, I don't think that our government accurately or even close to represents society as a whole. I don't think they're in touch with society as a whole. Um, that's not to say that they don't have an idea of it. I'm not saying that they're stupid, uh, but I also don't think that they're really close with the people, and like they would claim, with their constituents.
All right. David says you'd be okay with 2-year term or 2 years where we can have a vote to keep the current president and or House if they don't keep up with the promises that they made. Pretty much, I'm assuming that's what you're saying, David. The issue I feel with that would be is that's not always that person's fault, whether or not they can get what they promised done. Um, because again, sometimes you have to worry about the House. Like you may want, like border control, for instance. Trump said, "I want borders," right? And now he's fighting the House every step of the way to get that done. So that's not necessarily all on that one person. I feel like some things I agree are, some things shouldn't be, but you left me, girl. What happened? Oh, okay.
And stuff like that is tough. So one of my biggest problems is that, especially with presidents, and especially the one we got, because he's been doing it since the day, in my opinion, he has been, he's been campaigning since he started, and I have a problem with that. If we're paying you to do your job, do your fucking job, and stop this campaigning. Stop you being able to use Air Force One. Stop using resources. The same thing goes for governors. Same thing goes with
Okay.
everybody. You should not be allowed, while you're on the job, to campaign for yourself. And you say, well, when do they have time then? They're always on the job. Well, let's be honest. Everyone kind of has hours, right? And so I think it needs to be set up where here's roughly their hours. And again, they're on call for emergencies and everything else. But the whole notion that they can use their wages and their time, because they don't have to be anywhere else necessarily, to campaign, chaps my ass. That's like me going to work and saying, hey, you know what? I need to make sure that I can stay up to date with what I'm doing. I'm literally going to stop what I'm supposed to be doing and go learn this other thing, or make sure that my bosses really know I'm doing something. So I'm going to run out and grab them extra coffee. It's got nothing to do with what I'm doing. It's got nothing to do with my job, but this is going to look good that they know that I brought them coffee. And that's a really bad example.
I'm in power. How did I get fall damage?
But it's the notion of I can use taxpayer time and resources. And people are going to argue and say, well, they can't use resources. Well, you're paying them to be in office. So, they are, no matter how we look at it. And the same thing with the president. Everyone argues that what the president does in his first term, he gets done partially when he first gets in because he's all amped up. And then what he can do after his second term towards the end, because he's never trying to re-campaign again. Right? He can't campaign again because he can't run again after a second term. So they tend to get more stuff done in their second term. But they're only statistically, and again, statistics in my opinion, right? They only get that extra shit done because they can't possibly campaign again. Now they can try to campaign for somebody else, and they tend to a little bit, I side with this guy, right? But they're not campaigning like if they were fighting for themselves. And again, that gets back to my family and me first. F everybody else.
Alright, so he says, David here says, well, why not, he says wages. We could give the president and the House $18 an hour, and you can see them change. I don't think
But that's
really
the other
the
part.
wages aren't, they are an issue, but they're all usually pretty rich when they come in to office. I mean,
And
granted, they stay because they make money, but
and that's part of it, is that, like I already said, they already have money coming into this in generally, right? Cutting them down to certain dollar amounts or whatnot doesn't make sense in this case. It's a good idea. Don't take it the wrong way. I think we should pay our government the average minimum wage. And when I say that, a government employee's wage should not count into the average wage. Just so we're clear, that's a big problem, because every government job is funded by everybody else in the country, right? Your taxes pay for everybody else's salary. So you should not count a government agent's salary as part of the average for the country. But their wage, a government employee's wage, should be the average for what the country makes. And then you can say, fine, well, then they have really nice health care and everything else. But at least let's start with just the basic bare minimums and say, monetarily, government officials should not make more than the average person does. Because again, the average person is funding them.
I can agree with that one. That one I can totally agree with. Now, are we doing national average, or are we doing the average for where they're at?
That's a really good question. And again, this is all a screwed up numbers game, right? Because I don't know what a right answer that one is. I really don't.
Yeah, because I mean that is a.
I don't want. I'm afraid to pay too little for a government job because, I don't want Gomer Pyle, right? I don't want Gomer Pyle in there. And if no one's willing, and everyone's gonna say, "Well, you get to vote for him," unless, again, going back to my previous statements in this thing, that no one else runs against them.
Yep.
And then that's a problem.
So the pay becomes an issue at this point. Whether or not you can pay them, if you overpay them or underpay them, that becomes an issue. I think right now we are overpaying our senators big time and our government officials. I just don't think we're overpaying our president by too much. But as far as
that's a tough one, because a lot of shit does get taken out of his salary to pay for staffing and things like that. So it's a little bit of a catch-22 in his case. This president, I think we pay way too much because, again, I think he's a conniving bastard.
You don't like him. You don't like him.
No, I don't. I really don't. I don't like anyone who wants to take away any kind of safety nets that honestly help the average person. And again, I'm not talking safety nets as far as people need to be able to live off these safety nets because they don't try for a job or anything like that. But I do believe if you need a helping hand, there should be a system in place to help you get going in whatever that means. And I'll use a really good example of this, where people being good. So I am stuck right now on van life, right? Like I didn't understand it, and I still don't completely understand. I couldn't myself live in a van. I'm over 6 foot tall, so I can't imagine.
Explain van life for the
van life is basically people who choose, and I'm using the term choose, not homeless people, but people that generally actively choose to have a different alternative house arrangement. Well, not really. You could say lifestyle. Yeah. They're choosing a alternative to actual home and apartments and things like that. They're choosing to live in a vehicle of some kind, in whether that be an RV or literally a van, or even a car. Sometimes it is out of necessity, but these people have gotten together, right? And they've created this Wheels on Alliance to help other people in need or whatnot, and I think that's really good. And if I see that doing it, they're helping people stand up and get on their feet, and they're just common people. I think everyone should be willing to do that and reach out when they can.
Yes.
I'm not saying we should fund everybody so nobody has to work. That's far from it. But I feel that no child should ever go hungry. No child should ever need to want for medical care. I also don't feel any child should be abused. I mean, I think we need
Yes.
stricter laws to protect children. That's not to say I'm taking away your parental rights. I'm just making sure that you're not beating the shit out of your child or starving them and burning them with cigarettes. But along those lines, I think that children should always be fed. I think that everyone should have the right to education. I'm not saying education, higher education. I'm a firm believer that colleges are for people that are going to go into fields that are college bound, that require college bound. Um,
Hmm.
I think entrepreneurship uh, is a wonderful thing. I think apprenticeship needs to come back. Um,
I do
and
agree
I
with that.
think those things
Apprenticeships.
really all go together. I think that whole sphere of things go together, but you need those safety nets there to make sure that people are looked after, at least into a certain age. And then when it comes to healthcare, always. Um, I think we get screwed, and I think our government is letting us screw us. And I think, you know, um, they're not even willing to try because there's so much money being made in narcotics. Uh, I have a buddy whose dad just got another bout of something, and the pills come out to $106 per pill,
Yes.
right? It's $106 per pill, and that's not even expensive as far as pills go, but that is expensive. Now he's got a copay and whatnot, but if it was if it was value that was said by the insurance company, it'd be $106 per pill, and he's got to take a dead minimum. I think it was like 90 pills,
That's nuts.
right? Now, how could you do that if you didn't have insurance? And who's
Right.
stepping up to help these people? Who's stepping up to say insurance companies, you're screwing over the American people? We can have arguments whether or not gouging is patriotic, and we can get into the argue about capitalism and whatnot, but at no point in time does capitalism come to the point where you are screwing over your people so much that you're physically and mentally draining your country and making it weaker, right?
Right.
And if you have sick people, and if you have constant poor people, and you've got issues going on, that's not helping your country. That's really seriously detrimental. And who's helping this? And who's stepping in to say, you know what, gouging for the sake of this sucks?
Yes. All right. Well, we're gonna end this live stream really fast with that, and we'll be back.